There was a boy who had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. He wanted to give this food to Jesus because he had seen what Jesus had done at the feeding of the 5,000, and he believed that Jesus could do even more. This boy must have been about 12 years old. And when he came up to Jesus, he said, "Rabbi, here are my 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." And Jesus said, "Bring them here to me." So the boy brought the loaves and the fish to Jesus. And immediately Jesus did something that caused the other disciples to be very upset. He took the loaves and the fish, looked up to heaven, blessed the food, and broke the loaves. Then he gave the fish to his disciples so they could give them to the people. Now, why did Jesus do this? Why did he take the boy's lunch and not just use it to supplement the food that he was going to pull out of the water? Well, you need to understand something about Jewish law in those days. If something was clean and pure, it was set aside for a special purpose. It couldn't be used for anything else. In other words, if you were going to use that food for a miracle, it had to be totally separated from any other food, or it would defile it. So Jesus took this boy's lunch, blessed it, and broke the loaves. That way, nothing else could be mixed with it. It was now totally set aside for the miracle. Now look at verse 11. It says, "The disciples said to him, 'It is not lawful for us to take a kid or a lamb and offer it outside of the camp.'" Now, if you read the book of Deuteronomy, you will see that there was a law that required that if someone was going to make a burnt offering to God, it had to be done inside the camp. The reason for this was because the night before, the Israelites had celebrated Passover, and that required that all the meat had to be cooked and eaten inside the camp. So they thought Jesus was breaking the law by taking this food and giving it to the people outside the camp. But Jesus turned around and said something that really shocked them. "They have fasted long enough. You give them some fish." Now, one thing we need to understand about fasting is that fasting didn't necessarily mean that they weren't eating. Fasting meant that they were only eating certain things. They weren't allowed to eat things like meat or eggs or dairy products. They could eat vegetables and fruits and grains, but that's all they could eat. It wasn't that they went without food, but they did go without meat and things like that. So Jesus said, "They have fasted long enough. You break their fast with some fish. Give them some fish." The word break in the Greek language doesn't just mean break the fast. It means to burst the fast. You break a fast the same way you break a chain. You break it with power. So he didn't just say, "Hey, give them some fish, they'll break their fast." He said, "You break their fast with the fish. You give them the fish so they can break their fast." And that's exactly what happened. So these people who had been fasting and had been following Jesus, they finally got a chance to eat some good food, some fish. And then it says in verse 13, "And when the people saw the sign, Jesus called his disciples to himself. And there he took them, and from among them he chose 12, whom he also named apostles." So after this miracle, Jesus then chose the 12 apostles. We learn a few lessons from this passage. Number 1, whatever we have is sufficient. If we have an egg, or $5 or $10, or a piece of pie, if we have a little bit of something, that's enough for God to work a miracle. We don't have to wait until we have a lot. When the boy came up to Jesus, he said, "Here's what I have. Can you do something with that?" Jesus didn't say, "That's not enough. Go get more." No, he took what the boy had and did something with it. Sometimes we think we need more than we do. We need to learn to be content with what we have and realize that whatever we have is sufficient for the work God has called us to do. The second lesson is that God can use anyone. Here was this 12-year-old boy who had a few loaves of bread and some fish. He wasn't a fisherman. He wasn't an experienced miracle worker. He wasn't even an apostle yet, but God could use him. Do you think that boy felt special when Jesus asked for his lunch? I'm sure he felt important. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And when he calls you, he gives you everything you need to do what he wants you to do. So never say, "I'm not qualified," or "I don't have enough," or "I'm too young," or "I'm too old." When God calls you, he equips you. Amen.